In the last session that we had, we talked about MIS and what all components are there of the management information systems. We also discussed the objectives of an MIS system, of a management information system, and we also talked about the difference between the manual information systems and the management information systems. Now we are going to discuss the subsystems or the various constituents of the management information system. So what all are the different types of management information systems? This is what we are going to take up in this particular session. So the first one is the transaction processing system. Now what does the transaction processing system does? It basically records all the day-to-day activities, all the daily transactions that take place. So it is a system that supports day-to-day repetitive tasks. So those tasks which take place almost on a daily basis and they are repetitive in nature. Structured tasks take place on almost all the days. For example, if you go to a retail store, every day customers come and the billing is done every day. Likewise, if you go to the bank, the cash dispersal happens every day, or the cash deposit happens every day. Likewise, if you go to an organization, people come to job every day, so naturally their attendance would be recorded every day. So these kind of daily activities are taken care of by the transaction processing system, and it basically maintains detailed record of all such transactions. So all such transactions are recorded by the transaction processing system, and it enables managerial monitoring and control. Since it records all the transactions, the managerial personnel can have a look at the transaction data. They can have a look at the detailed transaction data, and this can help them in controlling and managing the organization. So though the transaction processing system collects data regarding the day-to-day activities, it actually is helping the managerial personnel in managing the organization. Data is generated at the operational level. So the data would be generated at the operational level, at the lowest level in the organization. The daily activities which are taking place, they are recorded. So the data is getting generated at the lowest level in the organization, and it is getting recorded in the TPS or the transaction processing system. Now this is an example of a transaction processing system. Now this screenshot is of a particular software which is used by a particular bank, and now this, as you can see here, this is the screenshot when that particular bank is opening account of a new customer. So this is how it appears. Now you can understand that opening account is a daily activity. Every single day there would be number of accounts that will have to be opened up. There would be number of applications for opening an account. Number of people would turn up, so their accounts would be opened up. So all this information would be entered here. Now you can see here account name, account short name, account report code. So all these things are there. They have to be mentioned here. Right now this is an example of a transaction processing system. What will basically happen is it is going to keep a record of all such accounts which are being opened. Fine. So this is what is happening, and how is it operating? Please understand, the bank personnel will log into his account, and then he will open up a saving account or open up a current account, and whenever he opens up an account, he will need to fulfill all the details here. Like you can see here, the details have to be filled up here. The account opening date has been mentioned here. So all these details he will fill up. For example, collect charges, he has mentioned Y or yes, right? So all these details will have to be filled up. Now this basically is number one, helping in the day-to-day repetitive tasks, and plus at the back end it will be keeping a record of all such transactions, all such accounts which have been opened up. It will keep a detailed record of that, and we'll find out how it is going to help the managerial personnel. So that we'll find out in the next slide, right? And you can see that this data is getting generated at the lowest level in the organization, at the operational level, where the account is getting opened and a customer is coming in and he's asking for his account to be opened, and then the banking personnel who is actually manning a particular window, manning a particular desk, he or she will be opening up the account based on the information provided by the applicant. So this is what is happening. So day-to-day repetitive activities are getting done using the transaction processing system. Now please understand this particular point. We need to understand, we have said that it basically enables the managerial monitoring and control, but how does this happen? You'll get to know in the next slide. Basically what happens is, we have got another kind of a system of the MIS. The first one was the transaction processing system. The second one is the information reporting system, or MIS. Now it is also called MIS. So first thing, don't get confused between the two MISs. This is basically talking about MIS in the broad sense, which comprises of so many systems, including the transaction processing system, the information reporting system. Then we'll have some other kind of systems also, which we'll have a look at in the coming slides. For example, the decision support system and the expert systems. So this MIS is basically the broader sense. It is basically being used here in the broader sense, while this MIS is a synonym for information reporting system, right? And this has been used in the narrower sense, right? And that is why, rather than using this particular term, you keep using this one, information reporting system, rather than using this term. Fine. When you go to the organizations and people at times, they say that okay, we have to generate this MIS, they are talking in this kind of a narrow sense. However, MIS in the broad sense will have different components. As I said already, TPS is one, transaction processing system is one, which we have discussed, information reporting system that we'll be discussing in this slide. And then let me move a little forward. These are the other kind of subsystems within the MIS: office automation system, process control system, executive information system, and knowledge based system. So they are all different types of different constituents of MIS when we talk about MIS in the broad sense. Is this okay? Now, so not to confuse you any further, what we will do, we'll be not making use of this particular term, which is the use of MIS in very narrow sense. It will be rather using this particular term, information reporting system, right? Now what we have to do is, we have to basically understand how the data which has been generated during the day-to-day activity and which has been stored in the transaction processing system, how it enables managerial monitoring and control, right? Now please understand, this is the second constituent of MIS, information reporting system. Now what happens is, it is basically using the data from the transaction processing system. So the data which we had collected in the transaction processing system is going to be used here, and it will be basically, information reporting system will be doing what? It will be basically summarizing this data. It will be generating reports from the transaction processing system. Do you understand my point? I'll give you the example which I had taken a little while ago. We had talked about the account opening form. We had talked about the daily account openings which take place in a particular bank branch. Now what will happen at the end of this? Suppose the bank branch manager wants to know how many accounts were opened, how many of them belong to a male applicant, how many of them were opened by female applicant, and if he wants to find out the age group distribution of the accounts opened. So he wants to find out how many accounts were opened by people in the age group of 20 to 40, in the age group of 40 to 60. What can he do? All this data has been generated, all this data has been collected and stored in transaction processing system. Now he'll make use of that particular data, and what will he do? He'll be generating report from that particular data. So the base will be the data collected by the transaction processing system, and this will generate some reports, and that would be called information reporting system. Is this understood? And this information reporting system is doing what? It is basically using the data from the transaction processing system, and it is generating reports. Now please understand, what is the difference between the two? Transaction processing system is only collecting data, and it is collecting detailed data for every single account holder. Every single data is getting collected. Remember what we saw in the last slide? So this data is getting collected, age, and whether or not to collect charges, like here, turnover details. All this data is getting generated on a daily basis, and this data is getting collected because of the transaction processing system. The transaction processing system is actually helping us generate and collect and store this particular data, right? Now what will information reporting system do? It will actually summarize this data. Now this is the difference. While the transaction processing data is only collecting the data, information reporting system is going to use the data collected by transaction processing system, and it is going to give a summary of that data, not the whole detail. And this detail will be used by the managerial personnel for what? For monitoring, management, control, all these things. Is this understood? So the data is getting generated and collected at the TPS stage, transaction processing system stage, and then summary reports are being generated from that particular data. Now this is just to give you an idea of the kind of summary reports which are generated. Now this, if you look at this particular thing, see, the transaction data must have been collected every single day in the month of January, February, all days, all working days, this data, and the number of times the purchases were made, or the number of times the sales were made, what was the price at which the purchases were made, and what was the price at which the sales were made. Every single thing must have been recorded by the transaction processing system. And now the information reporting system is giving you a summary of all that data, what has happened throughout the year. It is giving you a basic summary. Is this fine? So basically this summary has been prepared from the data which has been collected by the transaction processing system. And that is why, what did I say a little while ago? Let me get back a little bit. I said that the transaction processing system enables managerial monitoring and control, right? How does it do that? Because from the data collected in the transaction processing system, we can generate these summary reports, or this information reporting system can operate, right? And this is how basically the managerial personnel would be using the summary report generated through the information reporting system for controlling and managing the organization, right? Now what are the various types of reports that get generated? Regular reports could be there, and now please understand, I've told that these reports are in the pre-planned format, so the format is pre-decided, right? For example, in this case the format is decided that okay, quantities, month-wise quantities and prices, and then sales quantity and prices, everything has to be shown. Fine. So these formats are pre-existing, they are pre-entered into the system, and the system accordingly prepares the report and presents it, right? So these different types of reports could be there. The regular report, so which has to be produced at a predefined frequency. For example, if you go to a bank, what you will find at the end of the day, they will find out a regular report would get generated which will actually summarize all the accounts that were opened, and the accounts would be categorized category wise or gender wise or age wise also, right? So these are regular reports that get generated. Then we have got ad hoc reports. Ad hoc reports are once in a while, when user requires these reports, then only these reports would get generated. So they would not get generated until unless the user requests them. And then these are the exception reports. So another kind of reports are known as the exception reports. What will happen in an exception report? Exception is something which is beyond what is the norm. Apvad, something that does not normally happen, that is exception. And you know that management by exception, there is a particular approach which says that management by exception is more efficient. You should only, as a manager, you should only intervene whenever there is an exception. For example, the principal would only intervene when the classes are not being conducted on time. He would not intervene when the classes are getting conducted on time. So this is an example of management by exception, right? So for that you have to generate exception report, because you need to understand what exceptional things have happened, and these kind of reports can also be generated through the information reporting system. They only present exceptional matters, what is not the norm. They are not going to present what is the norm. They are only going to present the exceptional matters for managerial intervention. Fine. Is this understood? For example, let's say, and nowadays many a times what happens is, for example, the banks, they have their own fraud detection mechanism. So if from the same account on the same day multiple withdrawals have taken place, multiple withdrawals, right, from the same account on the same day, multiple withdrawals, many number of withdrawals have taken place. Now this is just not normal, because whenever a customer wants to withdraw, he will withdraw once, maybe he might withdraw twice or thrice, but he is not going to withdraw from his account 10 or 20 times in a day, right? Now this is an exception, and whenever these kind of things happen, the exception report would be generated, and this report would present to the managerial personnel that these kind of activities are taking place. Now the managerial personnel can probably call up the concerned customer or individual and find out from him whether he was actually making the withdrawal or somebody else has actually stolen his debit card, ATM card. You understand my point? So these kind of exception reports are also generated whenever something happens that is an exception, that is not expected in the normal routine. So these three kinds of reports are generated, and I have told you that the base is the data collected through the transaction processing system. I hope you remember the case study regarding the Uttarakhand Parivahan Nigam. Do you remember Uttarakhand Road Transport Corporation, and we talked about the electronic ticketing machines. Now please understand that these electronic ticketing machine is basically a device which is helping in the collection of day-to-day data, the passenger details and the data regarding the boarding points. I hope you remember the case study that we have discussed. Now please understand, these ETM are basically collecting this kind of a data, the passenger detail, how many number of passengers, boarding point, and where the passenger is going to get off the bus, and the number of kilometers traveled, and all this kind of data. Now this is basically transaction processing system, and if I, as the manager of the depot, what I do is I make use of all this data collected through different electronic ticketing machines, and then what do? I try and find out which routes are most busy for me, on which routes there are maximum number of customers, maximum number of passengers. Then this would be an information reporting system, right? This is fine. Now let us move over to the other subsystems. Office automation subsystem or office automation system. Now please understand, you understand what the meaning of automation is. Automation is doing things on its own. So that is what automation is. So more automation would mean less human intervention, and this is basically the job of office automation systems, right? They are different types of technologies, and they are all part of the MIS in the broader sense, right? We have discussed what we mean by broader sense. So they are all part of MIS, apart from transaction processing system and the IRS that we have just now discussed. Now this is the office automation system. Now what will happen in the office automation system? A number of technologies would be there, not one kind of a technology, but different kind of technology and different kind of equipments, and the whole objective is to improve the efficiency of the office work. So they improve the efficiency of the office work. We'll understand how. For example, these are the kind of technologies which are there. Word processing technology. Earlier, if you have to draft a letter, what you would do 50 years earlier, 50 years ago, what would you have done? You would have typed it on a piece of page, and then had somebody found a mistake in that, you would have again typed it. But this is no more the case. Now you can go for word processing. You can go for word processing, and the technologies which you already are using, for example, is the MS Word, on which you can create and manipulate and print a document. And whenever there is a mistake, you don't need to take a printout, find out the mistake, again take a printout. You can make the correction in the soft copy. I hope you know, and you have been doing this. So you have been making your presentations, you have been making your research reports. So what do? You basically type it on the computer and using the word processing applications, for example MS Word, and then what do? Then whenever there's a mistake, you edit it there and then once everything is fine, then only you take a printout. In that sense, it has improved the efficiency. So if you want to create a document, if you want to write a document, if you want to print a document, if you want to manipulate, means if you want to edit a particular document, you are going to make use of word processing softwares. Now this is an example of an office automation system. Now again, we have this example of desktop publishing. Desktop publishing is, for example, you want to make a collage of different photographs of the picnic, for example. Now this is an example, and you want to write a caption at the bottom, at the lower half Now this is an example of desktop publishing, in which you combine the text and the photo and the artwork, right? We had to prepare a banner for the department, and how did we do that? We actually prepared the format on our desktop, and then we simply gave it to the printing press, and they printed it for us. So this is what we mean by desktop publishing. Again, spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are used for storage, analysis and presentation of data, and you have been using spreadsheets. For example, the Microsoft Excel that you use is an example of a spreadsheet only. So you can store the data, so the data regarding all the students who are there, what are their names, and what is their percentage in the exam, and how many sport events they have won, and then you can summarize it and you can present it also. You have been doing all these things, so you know, and these things are used very extensively in the office, in the workplaces. So they are basically helping the offices and the people working there in those offices improve their productivity and efficiency. Again, you've got electronic mail. You can exchange messages electronically. You don't need to send a message through post. You can send it in an instant, and within a minute you might also receive the response. So this is the kind of improvement in efficiency that has been witnessed because of these office automation systems. We have got teleconferencing, I hope you know, and we are not going to discuss this in depth. Fax, the calendar that you have, the electronic fund transfer, wherein you can use the computer or the desktop or the mobile, and you can transfer money from one account to the other. So all these things, they basically make up the office automation system, and this again is a subsystem or a component of the MIS in the broader sense. So we are talking about the MIS in the broader sense, and wherever I am going to refer to MIS now, I would be referring in the broader sense only. I would not be referring to this one, right? I would be referring to MIS in the broader sense, and please understand, office automation system, again, as I said, is a component of MIS, and it helps improve the efficiencies. Process control systems. I hope you remember the discussion that we had when we were going through production and operation management, wherein we discussed various concepts regarding the production management and the operations management. There you had talked about various processes. Now in organizations it is very, very difficult. For example, I hope you remember your visit to the Parle factory. So for example, within the Parle factory, let's say there is a oven in which the biscuits are getting baked, and the optimum temperature should be, let's say, 100 degrees centigrade. So I'm just giving an example. Now it's just not possible for human monitoring here in such a case. Why? Because it's going to be very, very difficult also, and it's going to be, you need a particular individual stationed there to keep a tab on the temperature. How can we keep a tab on the temperature, and how we can ensure that the temperature is somewhere around 100 degrees centigrade? We can make use of process control systems. What will they do? Computerized control of production process. So what will happen? It would be, the process control system here would be controlling the process. It would not allow the temperature to rise above 100 degrees centigrade or to fall below 100 degrees centigrade using the computer. So this system would be making use of computer. What will happen? Basically, there would be sensors. So in my example, within the oven there would be sensors, and sensors would be measuring the process variables. In our case, the process variable is the temperature. So they will keep measuring the temperature, and then based on the measurement, they would be providing feedback to the computer, and the computer would be making automatic controls and adjustment. So for example, the sensor would keep sensing, let's say every 5 minutes they would keep sensing the temperature. Suppose the temperature has fallen to 98 degrees centigrade. Now they would send a signal to the computer, and the computer would do what? It would start the control mechanism. So it would start increasing the temperatures. On the other hand, if the sensor sensed the temperature to have gone beyond 105 degrees centigrade, what will happen? The signal would be sent to the computer, and the computerized control would come into play, and the temperature will then be reduced so that the temperature can fall to 100 degrees centigrade, right? So this is how the process control systems work, and they again are part of the management information systems. And then we have got the executive information system. Now I hope you know what executives are. We are not talking of the operational level employees, we are talking of the middle level and the top level managerial personnel, and they also require information so that they can take various decisions. And basically executive information system is one component of MIS which actually provides focused information to enable top management decision making. So it basically provides focused information. It is not going to provide all kinds of information to the executives. It is only going to provide relevant pieces of information to the executives so that they can take important decisions which are very, very crucial for the organization, right? So again, now this is going to help the top management and the middle management so that they can take decisions. Now there are knowledge based systems also. Knowledge based systems, they are not only dependent on data and the summary of the data, they are also dependent on domain knowledge, area specific knowledge, right? For example, decision support system is there and the expert system is there. I'm not going into too much depth here because we have to basically discuss the decision support system as well as the expert system in the coming minutes. So I'll be stopping the discussion here, and in the next session that we'll have, we'll talk about the organizational hierarchy and at what level in the organizational hierarchy what kind of management information systems are more useful. And plus we are also going to talk about why MIS projects or why management information systems tend to fail in some organizations. While they succeed, they become very, very successful and they are able to earn organizations a lot of profit in some other instances. So that is going to be the agenda in the next session. Thank you very much for your time.